So greetings, everyone. Feedback.
Okay, let's try that again.
All right. Greetings, everyone. I would like to welcome people who are watching, wherever you have found us on the internet. I am so glad that you did. My name is Evelyn Duluyemi. I am director of Kibolebole Educational Institute. We offer a variety of African-centered educational programs. We have a homeschool for girls, age 5 to 12. We have co-ed after-school programs. We have tutoring. And as a benefit of our collaboration with Aya Educational Institute, we have some web conference programs as well. We're going to be having a conversation today about African-centered education, and specifically about how families might choose an African-centered school. And to help us with that, we have Baba Wekesa Mazimoyo. He is co-director of Aya Educational Institute. And before we get started, Baba, can you tell us a little bit about Aya and also about the exciting program that I know Aya has planned for a couple of weeks from now?
Oh, thank you, Evelyn. So glad to be here and proud to be connected with Kibolebole. Aya Educational Institute was started by Fia and myself in 1998. So we've been at it for a minute, providing African-centered education for our children and for adults. And when we say children, we basically now serve middle school and high school, though earlier on we served all ages. Let's see here. For adults, we offer our warriors, healers, and builders personal and leadership development technology that cuts across a number of different areas: economic development, relationships, organizational development. And for our youth, we serve them with a full middle school and high school curriculum. Full meaning parents can enroll their students part-time or full-time on our weekend schools. If they choose to full-time, they get credit all the time, but they can get a diploma from us, and our students go to whatever colleges they want to go to, and usually they get handsome packages. We're about the business of creating education that serves our people, and serves our people first, not because of how much they are approved of by others or serve us indirectly. And that's what Aya Education Institute is about. And this, the 8th and 9th of June, no, July, we're past June, the 8th and 9th of July, we're having here in Atlanta a WHB Super Weekend. WHB stands for Warriors, Healers, and Builders. And that's what our educational program is designed to create. Africans who are warriors, who challenge people, policies, and practices that aggress upon our people and oppress our people. Healers, because we've been wounded by oppression and continue to be so. And builders, because while we fight and while we heal, we still have to build families and organizations and institutions and stuff like that. So that's why we call it the WHB Super Weekend. And on Saturday, we're going to really talk about African-centered education, Saturday morning from 10 to 12. It's a free session. It's going to be held at Quilombo Academic Academy on Columbia Drive in Decatur. But we'll talk maybe some more about that, sprinkle that in. I'm so glad to be here with you.
Wonderful. We're really looking forward to it. So I want to really get right into it. I want to have a conversation about the process of choosing a school. There are so many different types. There's such a large spectrum, right? All the way from public school to private schools, independent African schools, all the way to homeschooling your child yourself. Why might a parent want to choose a school or homeschool support system like Aya or like Kibolebole? And why might they want to choose something else along that spectrum?
Okay. Well, first, the reason I think I encourage and I hope parents want to choose a homeschooling option, regardless of how that particular pans out, how deep it is, how involved, how alone it is, all of that. Because our parents, as parents, we're our children's first teachers. And we're always their learning directors. That is, whenever there's a subject that you don't have time to teach, you don't have the training to teach, then you get to choose who you want to educate your children. That is because you're directing that. You may choose person A versus person B because more is caught than is taught. Now, I really want to stress that, because many times we think education is just whatever is covered in the curriculum and the syllabus, but more is caught from the teacher than is taught by the teacher. And so who that teacher is, their connection to African people, their love for our people and our culture, their connection to that student, which affirms them, that's critical. And very often we surrender that to a curriculum, to a particular syllabus, to a course line or something written on a piece of paper. And we shouldn't do that. So at all levels, we're homeschoolers, as we are the first teachers and always the learning directors. Now, when you're getting support for that, whether that support is you're going to send them to a public school. Now, notice I'm calling public school a support for homeschool, because homeschooling, as a parent, you are the first educator, and you are, in this case, you're directing them to public school because you want to use public school as a resource to serve your objective for your student. Unfortunately, many people don't have that attitude. They send them to school, and school is the educator, and the parents are drug along, kicking and screaming, maybe. Okay. In this way, we're flipping it. You get to choose the public school, and if you want to choose a public or private or any other supplement to you based on the goals that you have. That's the first thing that's important to say. And I'll come back with the rest, but you may want to follow up with that or respond to that, because very often we surrender our education of our children when we shouldn't. And I don't care whether it's a private school that costs you $50,000 a year. I don't care whether it's an African-centered school. I don't care whether it's a public school or whatever. We're not to surrender our children. You're the director, and you said, you need this in this way, and I'm choosing this institution for particular reasons to help me get you to where I think you ought to be.
Okay. I think that sometimes parents may see the benefits in African schools, but also have fears about them. And so I wanted to talk a bit about some of those fears. I think sometimes parents may feel like the curriculum is not rigorous, like their students may not be able to compete, like they have issues about socialization that they're concerned about. So I want to sort of go through those one by one and see what your response would be to some of those.
Okay.
Let's start with the idea of rigor, that African-centered education is not or may not be a rigorous education.
Well, I just learned, by example, I was talking to a brother earlier today who's competing as a producer of music, and he was telling me about a good friend of his that's called Ninth. And what Ninth chose to do was to take some favorite albums or music, but albums of music. So you have 10, 13 songs on it. And his work was to identify for each of the songs what sample was there. So one song might sample 3 pieces of music that went before, or 9. Okay. And then he went and studied the sample. Okay. So if there are 10 songs and they have 30, 3 each, okay, then he's studying 30 samples. So he goes back to the history of that, and then he follows the history of where that sample came from. What I'm saying to you is this is an example of someone focusing on our music, okay, and at the same time, the level of rigor, right, because he's studying the history and the musical etymology, if you will, of several different albums, all of which have at least 10 songs, all of which have at least 30 samples. And so the level of rigor that was required was far beyond what he would have been required to do by someone else. Okay. But the positive part of it is because he was interested in it, it was connected to him. It was centered in him centered in his culture and something that had meaning to him. He was willing happily to do 3 times as much work as he would have been required to do. And so many people think that an African-centered education is just about African history. Well, African history certainly is important, and it's about African-centeredness. So if we study astronomy, as we study architecture, archaeology, whatever, it started with us, and you begin to deal with us, and the rigor is there. Sometimes people mistake the fun that students are having with lack of rigor, and that's a real problem that we've associated pain with rigor, and it doesn't have to be that way. And if it's African-centered, very often there's a level of excitement and joy that is underneath it. So that's all I have to say about the rigor. It's not. I understand that it's a fear, and what I'm trying to do is to allay your fears that no, rigor is not lost because it's African-centered. In fact, at Aya, it's actually more, because we say we're teaching you to know how to become warriors and healers and builders. We're teaching you so that you know how to use your skills to lift our people. And that is a standard a lot higher than I'm teaching you so you can go get a job. Okay.
Wonderful. So let's talk about that fear of getting a job, of being able to, going to an African-centered school. Will you be able to get a job? Will you be able to go to college? Parents are certainly concerned about that. What would you say to that?
What did you learn in 7th grade that helped you get a job when you were 25? The importance is our students are able to get jobs everywhere, anywhere, and them being grounded in themselves means that they will have worked harder, means their level of confidence, their level of a sense of identity and who they serve would be stronger. So our students will be able to transfer their knowledge into, whether it's going into business for themselves, going into business with other people, getting a job, going to college. I said earlier, our students get accepted at any colleges they apply to, and they get handsome packages because of the rigor and because of the African-centeredness, because their level of confidence and their level of knowledge is tremendous. And when they begin to compare themselves with other students, they realize how much they compare much more than favorably.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's talk about this idea of socialization, right? Which also I think maybe goes along with, there's the idea of in a small setting that the child won't have an opportunity to socialize. And there's the idea, the fear, I think, with some parents that in a setting that has only Africans, that the child won't learn how to interact with non-Africans. How would you those fears?
Okay, that's a doozy, and it's a wonderful one. I'm so glad you asked. The reason I'm laughing is because many times we have surrendered our socialization of our children to public and sometimes private school, and that's a shame, because we decide that we're going to send them to this school, and whatever that school has for them. It's not like that we're in charge of creating the social set. It's not like we're in charge of or often even aware, have any influence over who's there, who's not there, what's taught, what's not taught, what's the social life going to be like. We literally surrender that to others, and it's really a shame, because socialization helps us define who we are and where we fit. And we've just turned that over. Now, whenever the teacher and the principal sat on the same pew as the parent, that may have been okay, because the principal's lot, the teacher's lot was the same as the lot of the parent. Not so anymore. And so it's really important first that we take the importance of socialization more seriously than when we're just arguing that our children won't be socialized, to examine what is the actual socialization at the particular school, a public or private school you're choosing for them. That's number one. Number two, Our students have attended, and they get education, and they get support and love, and then they then translate that to their African dance class that's later on, to their chess class, to their swim club. There are many ways to socialize our children, but again, in this case, your school is the primary educator, and then you choose the various social groups that you want them to be in, and people and adults and youth that you want to have around them, so they become socialized the way you want them socialized. Or you can decide that you're just going to send them someplace, and they're going to do all of the education and all of the socialization, and then you wonder why they don't want to follow your lead, why they don't want to take on what you started and build. So that socialization is a wonderful question, and it's important that we think about it seriously. When we do think about it seriously, we'll see that it's really important for us to take charge of that again. The other one about if they're not around white children and Asian children and other children when they're young, they won't know how to do that and do that well when they're later on. That's absolutely not true. The opposite is actually a better way to prepare your children. Having your children feeling secure and having a sense of their own identity gives them a platform to appreciate other cultures without imitating other cultures. And if they're only imitating the cultures, then that creates a sense of lack of self-confidence, because they're always second to the originators of their culture. If they instead know their culture, they're grounded in it. And I don't just mean they live in it, they understand it, they know the nuances, they've studied it as well as enjoyed it. Then when they go to another group or another culture or another place or the language, then they're looking for, oh, that's how y'all make y'all grits. Oh, we don't put sugar on our grits. We do grits and gravy. You do grits and sugar. Okay, oh, that's how you do that. So there's a sense of being able to connect to and appreciate at a deeper level other cultures, because they're comparing them to their own. But if they don't study their own, if they don't really know their own, then in fact they will be able to start chasing gods not their own. And when I say gods, I mean gods, culture, things that you have that you admire, and they will have a decreased sense of power, a decreased sense of joy, and a decreased sense of peace, because they're imitating only.
Thank you so much for that. Those are some of the common fears that I've encountered. Are there any others that we haven't talked about that you've encountered that parents have inhibited parents from thinking about African-centered school, that you'd like to address?
Yes, an African-centered school has various political bents depending upon the school. And you said earlier there are many different options and that kind of thing. And many African-centered schools have a bent that they want to help to instill a mission in the child. And that mission is generally not to go along to get along, but to literally serve our community, that is the Black community, the African community first, and to lift our community. Now, if a parent is not comfortable themselves with that objective, they don't think that's a good thing, that they think the way, what we ought to be doing is just pretend that we're not Black at all and we're just human, and we don't need to prioritize our community in terms of our service over others' communities, then there are problems, okay, there. And there ought to be, because again, there's not a match. And I want to say something about this match. Whenever we're trying to find any school, you're trying to find a match. You're not trying to find a school that's going to, again, take over. You're finding a school that's an extension of at least your goals and your vision for your children. And when that's not a problem, when that's not a match, then keep looking, or create. Well, here's what we did. We were looking, we couldn't find it, so we created our own. So create your own.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm thinking. So I'm a parent, right? I've identified and addressed some of these fears, and now I need to get my spouse on board, right? Or now my spouse and I have addressed the fears, but we need grandmother and aunties and uncles to get in. what sort of advice can you give so that the family can have buy-in to send the child to this to an African-centered school?
Come to one of our super Saturdays and bring them to like the one that's coming up May 9th.
July.
Yes, going to be Fridays, 8th and 9th. Mainly because we have open houses, we have various events, and other African-centered schools do as well. So bring them so that they can actually see the children and sometimes see children performing. This past weekend, this last Saturday, we were in Cincinnati, and 4 of our students, presented to the audience some what they learned this year, and they were challenged by the audience. And at the same time, they could see, and there were people who had been thinking about African-centered schools or thinking about homeschooling, and they could, one, see the students, they could ask the students questions, both about their topic and also about their experience, okay, those things that you talked about. And then they could also talk to other parents and talk to the teachers and me and co-directors of the school. So that's because it's a big weight very often if you're kind of on board and then you going to take it upon yourself to get everybody else on board when you just got on board yourself. Okay, so getting a little help, and we have a number of online options. When we say online, we mean just like this, where it's actually interactive, so people could ask questions like you're asking me questions, and they could hear and see. That's what I'd recommend that they begin to do for them, so that it's not just them by themselves.
Okay. All right. So they've done that, right? And the family is on board. How do families that are new to the African-centered community choose a school that is truly African-centered, choose a school that is a good fit for them? How would they go about sort of making that kind of selection? In all honesty, I'm asking a question about how do they choose a school that is not a white school in blackface?
I love that. I'll repeat that. How do they choose a school that is not a white school in blackface? Right. We're not talking about a colored school. Okay. All right. The first thing is find a school where the people in the school, the teachers and the administrators, actually work and do things in our community outside of the school that are where they are advocating for our community, where they are building. I would say look for people who are warriors for our people. That is, they challenge people, policies, and practices that oppress our people, and they do that. Look for teachers and administrators and parents of those schools who also work to heal our community. They're not dogmatic. They are aware that our community is wounded, our people are wounded based on oppression, and we need to heal that, and they're engaged in that, and they approach you with that kind of welcoming and a sense of their own healing, and welcome you to that's a part of the program. And also people who are building. So is outside of the school, are the administrators doing things to support building in our community? Are the teachers doing things to support building in our community? So that's the first thing I would look for. Are they walking the walk? Number one. And then if they're walking the walk, then you're going to be able to judge a number of different things based on their walk. Now, in terms of if you're looking at curricula, then it goes back to, is their goal to produce warriors and healers and builders? Whether they use those terms or not, it's not important. Are they trying to find students who will be able to prove to white people that we're smart? Please avoid them like the plague. Okay, run. Don't walk. Say, thank you. All right. Are they trying to produce students that where getting a job is the only thing they want them to do? Scoring well on the XYZ test is the only or primary thing they want them to do. Now, that's not that getting a job is not important. It's not that scoring well on various tests are not important. It's just that if that's primary, then that means they're being guided. The curricula and their approach and what's caught is being guided by somebody that set it outside of what the school and the community needs. And so those are two things that, there are others, but let me say one.
Go ahead, Barbara.
Does the school approach education to help heal alienation? Now, the other two I gave you general, so this is just kind of one of my favorites in terms of, education, whether public or private, Eurocentric education, taught by us or taught by white people or taught by Asians, it doesn't matter, is designed to alienate the student from our culture, our community, our family, our way. Okay, to alienate us not just from our history, but when you lose your history, you also lose strategies. Okay, you lose priorities, you lose a sense of mission and identity. So that's already been a problem for us. That is a problem for us. So we have to heal alienation. The best of us are still disconnected from our culture and our people and our way. And that sense of discovering that and rediscovering that and reconnecting that is how do we heal alienation? Do we teach math in ways that you learn the math, but you don't connect? Math is not connected. It doesn't make you closer to your family. It doesn't make you closer. And for us, any subject that's being taught ought to be taught in a way that at the end, you are closer to your people and your culture and your family. And if that's not the case, if you're really wonderful with astronomy, but you're no closer to our people, then you need to run away from that, because it's basically teaching white supremacy.
Thank you for that. Okay, so our family has dealt with their fears. They've gotten the rest of their family on board. They've selected a school. How do they begin to make this transition? So, I mean, if the child has been going to public school or going to a different type of school that, and maybe the family hasn't been taking as much responsibility as we talked about, how do they transition to this sort of new educational environment?
To start is to start with themselves. That is to say, I'm going to school with my child. Okay, that, I didn't know this. I didn't learn some of this. So I'm going to school with them. I want the child to teach me what they've been learning, not from a sense of just I'm testing you, but also from that sense of, all right, I really didn't know about Kemet or Egypt. I kind of heard that Egypt was black, but you're taking this class, called, Upwat Kemet. And so tell me, so with a sense of excitement with the child, I want to learn with you. And then from that, you may do some other reading and some other viewing of videos online and other research, but you carry that sense of learning yourself. As opposed to just because you're the parent, you're supposed to already know this. Give me a break, because I'm old doesn't mean that I know science if that's not something that I really studied. And so it is that way that you model learning for your child, and you learn with your child, and you incidentally keep telling what you're learning to, Big Mama who came on board, and to your spouse that came on board, and all that.
All right, so another obstacle is frankly money, right? So what advice do you have for families they're all on board, they're super excited, and where are we coming up with this? How are we going to afford this? Do you have any advice for them?
Yes, the first advice is to look at where we're spending money otherwise that can be rechanneled to put it toward education. And I'm serious as a heart attack, because often the prioritization of education has been warped behind, how many times we're going to Burger King, or if that's what you're eating, or something, right? And so looking at where money is being spent and how much of that can be siphoned off and redirected toward education of the child is, to me, the first place to go. The second is also, when you're having your child in a special program like an African-centered education institute, consider it like they're going to the best, most prestigious white school in terms of prestige that you could find. And very often, and let's pretend that, they've given you a scholarship to get almost there, but part of the way you not got there, so you ask your mom, you ask your grandmama, you ask anybody to help you out, contribute $10 a month for the education, because they get a chance to go to this very special, wonderful you know, rigorous, prestigious African-centered school. And it's a chance of a lifetime, and their whole life will be changed. And so see if they're willing to say, okay, I'm willing to give you $10 a month, you know, toward this education. And then you make sure that whenever every 9 weeks in terms of IA, when the students are having to do presentations, that those people who are helping to fund this education are also there. Okay, that's number 2. All right. And number 3, you can also begin to look for resources in the community that you can ask for. All right. You know, other scholarship programs, other programs that may supplement what you're doing. All right. Next one. Then you talk to the people at the institution to see if you may have a skill set where you're able to barter out some of the tuition based on some time or some effort or something that you can do that adds value to the school. And with that combination, 1, 2, 3, 4, I think you can do it. Now, also with middle school and high school, what I also encourage parents to do is to get the students involved in cutting grass and saving some of their money toward their education and selling cookies or whatever you may want to sell, something maybe more healthier, but you know, cookies sell at barbershops, it'll work. Okay. and have and you help them and whatever, and a percentage of that goes toward their education. Please don't underestimate, you know, engaging students in that process, because it just means that they have more investment in it. All right.
Wonderful. Okay, so what are other ways? Because I know, certainly for me, and I'm guessing for you, we don't necessarily charge what it really costs, right? So, what are other ways that families can support African-centered schools, and even families who don't necessarily have children in those schools, so that so these institutions can continue to be there for the community going forward?
Well, you're absolutely right. If you're creating an African-centered education institution, then it's a labor of love and a commitment to our children and our families and our people. It is not what you want to do if you want to go out and start rolling in dough. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't get paid. You do, and it's a commitment and a sacrifice in many instances that can lead to many other things. So I want to echo that whatever you're being charged usually is a fraction of what it costs to keep the institution going. Ways to get to support the institution: you can be a part of a fundraising committee for the institution that help to raise money for the institution, and part of that is your own child's tuition. Okay, help to gather other parts of the community to support this kind of education, not just for the children who are attending, but for those who attend the demonstrations, who become inspired and instructed, for those parents and community people who attend those demonstrations who are inspired and instructed, and to have this as a model in the community such that it can be copied and replicated, etc. Is an African-centered education institution is a jewel in the community that the community needs to support. And the parent, in addition to what they may barter for their own skills, they may also choose to help raise money and organize the community to support it. And that, of course, is a way to offset their own tuition. As they get more and more people involved in supporting the school, then the tuition goes down and down and down. Okay. Now, one of the things that we have at IA is, like, if you want to attend IA, don't let money stop you. Let's talk about it. We figure out some kind of way to work it out if you really want the education. And in fact, that's the most important thing anyway, is deciding, do I want this education for my child? Okay, is this what I want? Is this valuable? And once that's done, then sitting with the Afia, other co-director, Afia Manzimoyo, and myself, or sitting with you or whomever is running the institution, usually, if a parent really wants it, we figure out how to together make it happen.
We sure do. Sure do. Well, I thank you so much. I know that many will benefit from what you shared. Before we go, I want you to remind everybody about the event coming up in July.
July 8th and 9th, I think that's the 8th, on Friday. And this is Araminta, the Warrior Hill Builder Story. It's a free session. It will be at I'm going to say Kibolebole, but it won't be Kibolebole. It'll be at Quilombo. Okay. And Quilombo Academic Academy, which is another institution that we partner with, that Aya partners with, Columbia Drive, Quilombo Academic Academy. And that's going to be 7 o'clock. From 7 to 9, it's learning the Harriet Tubman story from the inside out. It's learning her warrior story and her healer story and her builder story. It'll be told like you've never heard it before. That's on Friday night. And then on Saturday at 10 to 12, we have the African-centered education questions, answers. We'll have some demonstrations, at least one or two by some of our students, so the parents get to see it. You get to answer questions about Aya and about African-centered education generally. We love it. That's from 10 to 12. And then from 1 to 5, we have a taste of WHB. WHB is our Warrior Healer Builder weekend retreat, and also our technology, tools, skills, and the ones that will be presented on Saturday, we call the Blacknificent 7. 3 skills and 4 steps. And so, although we normally do it in the weekend, we get to introduce it in that 4-hour set, and that's going to be from 1 to 5. And then from 7 to 9, we are going to have a brothers only and sisters only discussion. And so, go to ayaed.com. It will be updated. If it's not, it'll be updated shortly so that you get all the details and telephone numbers and that kind of thing. That's ayaed.com. Or if you just Google Aya Ed or Aya Education, Aya Education Institute, you'll get us. And if you get to our home website, you'll see that information. I want to say thank you and thank Kibolebole Educational Institute for its work, for its focus on our girls. Many times we've heard of institutions and schools for Black boys, which is wonderful. And being a father, I'm partial to them sisters. So I love that the Kibolebole has a focus of African centeredness and African sovereignty and Black girls. Okay, I will say for those of you who don't know, this sister here, okay, Evelyn Dudiemi, is a master teacher. She loves, and here are the qualities. She loves our people. She loves your children who attend. She loves the subjects that she teaches, and she's good at them. And when you have that kind of combination, that's what the child catches. So, keep Kibolebole in mind for our young girls, and for an African-centered education for the whole family. Again, thank you for having me, Kibolebole. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining me.